can't hear you, Mike. No, I think God answered that with his statement. I think that was something we were looking into. And like I said at the press conference, I'm all for anything that's going to help this organization move forward. And we've been stuck in neutral for a while. That we're going to continue to address those levels of leadership, but I think we're very comfortable. And I really appreciate God stepping up, having the confidence in myself, Doug, that he's shown. Same responsibilities. Nothing's changed. Doug and I are going to lead the team forward. Feel very confident we can do that. Well, I think anytime you can add a pressure player to your team, on the defensive side, if you look at the track record in San Francisco with what we did there relative to the edge pressure, that's a positive. This draft happens to be a good draft. There's going to be depth into the second and even third round acquiring those type of players. Man, a good old friend. Great memories. It's a great organization, great leadership from ownership on down. I can't say enough good things about Jed and John and the family, the York family. My time there was well spent, and we accomplished a lot. We had some failures. That's part of this business. You ride that wave. Sometimes you're at the top of it, sometimes you're at the bottom of it. But I got nothing but respect for that organization and the people that own it. Well, I think anytime you go through what we went through in San Francisco, you get better. I mean, you learn from the successes and you learn mistakes that you make. Certainly, we made a few of them. I made my share, and you hope to learn from them and not repeat them. Well, the staff just got in. We just got through the initial end of the season reports that typically are done about 30 days earlier than this. So they're evaluating the team. We've had initial discussions relative to that, but the tight end position is a focal point. It always is, and it has been, as you mentioned, for Doug's off work through it. So it's going to be a position we certainly look to address. But we feel very good about the room that we have there currently right now. Young guy that we drafted, Luke Farrell out of Ohio State, picked up Dan Arnold last year in a trade, and then obviously with Chris Manners, we feel really good about that room. Will we add to it? There's a chance we do. I learned he likes to hunt fish. So do I. So that's a positive. But just really engaging, very collaborative, very easy to talk to, very easy to communicate with. So all of that's been positive. But the good thing, we don't just talk about football. We talk about life. We went golfing the other day with the wives and had a great time on the golf course. And that's something that we have to do more often. But the collaborativeness of what we're doing is very good right. Pardon? I can't speak to what he did in Philadelphia relative to collaboration with the general manager. We really haven't discussed that. What I think both of us are at. We've been through a lot professionally. Both of us have, and you get in an opportunity like this to take over a franchise and move it forward. That's been stuck, like I said, in neutral. That's what we're trying to do, and it's going to be a very collaborative effort. It's been that way from day one, and it's going to continue to be that way. Not at all. I don't know where that would even come from. We're high on Laviska. He does a lot of good things. He's an interesting. He obviously at his size and his speed and the things that he can do, we got to find ways to get him the ball. That's not my job. That's coach's job. So that'd be a great question for him. But by no means is the ship sailed on Laviska. No, because the preparation for free agency and the preparation for the draft, from a personnel perspective, we aren't behind. It's getting the coaches up to speed with where we're at, and they're working tirelessly to get there. So, yeah, we're a little bit behind in terms of when we would normally have the process done from the coach's standpoint, but not from the personnel standpoint. I think we're in really good shape. Pardon? Well, currently, right now, I mean, with Travis, obviously he was on the grass for a little bit in the off-season program. Then he got hurt. His development is, in terms of where he's at physically right now, he's ahead of schedule. He looks really good. He's taken the year to really transform his body and learn how to be a pro in his development. So we're really excited to get him back on the grass, and he is a little bit ahead of schedule right now. Well, you get to see him and talk to him and feel him in person. You know, the Zoom meetings, and just like these meetings. I mean, the Zoom meetings that we have with players or with reporters or anybody else you engage with just isn't the same as being here when you get to touch and feel and talk to someone directly. So I think it's a huge benefit to be here.
What do you think about the idea of if a trade came with a June 1st provision where you could split the dead cost, the dead cap cost? How much might that change the league?
I don't know. I'd have to. That's a good question. I'd have to really sit and think about it. Not something that off the top of my head I could really comment on right now.
You think there'd be a lot more movement?
I think there could be. I'd hate to say that that I definitively have an answer because I really haven't thought about it. But it's a good question.
You got the first overall pick. Is that something that you are going to definitely use, or are you open for business?
Well, you're always open for business. Now, whether you're going to be able to move it or we're going to be able to move it or not, but we're very comfortable taking the pick as well. You know, you got to be prepared for anything in this league. So to say we won't shop it is probably not 100% correct, but to say we will is probably not either. So we're going to see what comes, and if something comes our way and it makes sense to us, we'll make that decision at that time.
Talk about protecting the quarterback. Obviously, you saw the Super Bowl, you saw what happened in the playoffs. The protection of a good quarterback, what does that mean to the Jaguars?
Well, I think you're always trying to protect an asset, and obviously the quarterback's a huge asset to any organization. So anything you can do schematically and physically within player selection to protect them is advantageous to you. So. Well, you got to take the player that you think is the best fit for the organization as a whole and makes the biggest difference. And if that's the offensive tackle position, you do it. If it's edge rusher, you do it. You know, I've always been a believer, go big or go home. But this draft has a lot of unique players in it, and there may not be that clear number one, but there's a lot of very good football players at the top of this draft that we're going to have, obviously being in position number one, have our pick of those players.
Trent, there's always been obviously a premium on quarterbacks, but does it seem during your time in the game that has gotten progressively more true, just given the rules, just whatever? I mean, just looking at the state of the league today.
Well, no, I think when you look at the Super Bowls and who's won them, it's pretty obvious what it takes to get there and accomplish that mission. So the quarterback position is a key position, the key position on any football team, but it takes a lot of other good football players. When we got to the Super Bowl game in 2012, I think we had a roster that had a lot of very good football players on it. Your mission in the position I'm in is to get as many of those guys as you can get to supplement that quarterback position. We feel really good about Trevor, where he's at as a pro, where he is at as a person, and feel very confident that with him we can move forward and build a championship caliber football team. Well, I think the medical is extremely important, and that's, if you go back to when the combine was created, that's what it was created for. It was created for them to get together and get the physical, the medical information from the players, and then it became the workouts and the interviews and all the other stuff that goes with it. 5 years ago, I'd have probably said, if you don't work out here, it's going to hurt you. I don't know that I have that same mentality as I did back then. I think you grow, you learn, and you understand what these young men go through. I do think it's advantageous for them to work out, and whether they choose to work out here or work out at their pro day, I do think it's advantageous because there's going to be some people in this business that do hold that against them if they don't work out, because you got to get the numbers somehow, right? That's a good question. The value's in the eye of the beholder. What are they will? If someone wants to move up to one, what are they willing to give up? I can't answer that. I know what historically it would take to move up from each position, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen, and that doesn't mean that's what the value is going to carry this year. So that's a hard to predict number. I think there's a lot of strengths to this draft. I think you look at the wide receiver position, you look at the offensive line position, I think you look at the rush position. I think there's some depth at the cornerback position. There's a lot of good football players in this draft, and I think there's going to be good football players to be gotten through every round. Some are going to need more development than others, obviously, but I think this is going to end up to be as we look back on this draft 3 years from now, I think it's going to be a pretty positive outcome for a lot of these young men. I'm sorry.
This past month, what's the biggest way Doug has put his imprint on Bill?
Doug's a natural leader. He really has got a great affect to him. He comes in the building, he's positive every day. I always tell him, he's the optimist, I'm the pessimist. And then I like to say I'm a realist, but what's a realist? It's really a pessimist in hiding, right? So, it's been a good mix. He's got a great personality, and you like being around it every day. Yeah, first of all, I'm really happy for those guys, Jimmy Ward and Tart. I think those guys have had really good careers, and they're great young men. That's what I probably look at and am the most fond of, is the type of men they turned out to be. But that's a tough position to navigate in the draft, and because there's a lot of guys that come into the NFL the lower ranked that end up having great careers. It's just a really hard position to gauge, but I think this draft has some really good prospects in it at every level with that position, the safety position. So it's not a strong position of need for us, but if the right player's there at the right time, we're always going to take the value of that player at that pick.
Two more questions, please. Two more. Go ahead.
Sterling Lucas, who worked with you guys as assistant defensive line coach last year. I'm just curious what your interactions were with him and how you saw him fit in at South Carolina and the college level.
Yeah, I think Sterling Lucas is a rising star in the business. I really do. I think he's a young man that connects well with the players. He works tirelessly. He's a good family man, and I wish him nothing but the best in South Carolina.
Last question.
Well, we got to get him more. We got to protect him better. and we got to get more explosive plays around him, guys that can make explosive plays. I think if you look, it's tough in the National Football League to move the ball 14, 15, 16 play drives and score. It just doesn't happen that often. You got to be able to throw a 7-yard dig and turn it into an 80-yard touchdown, and you got to have players that can do that. And you know, that's the mission this offseason and free agency and the draft is to, you know, get more explosive players on both sides of the ball, guys that can change games. That's what you win and lose football games with.
Thank you, Trent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.